Hey there, Patty Dominguez. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode number 8 of Her Legacy podcast. Happy New Year. It's 2019. So much to look forward to this year. And I'm sure you have your eyes set out on making your own movement. So I thought it would be a great interview to launch at the beginning of this year, how to launch your own movement. I have as a guest Denise Soler Cox, who is an unbelievable woman. She has grown up as a Latina in the suburbs of Manhattan and coming in with this whole opportunity to create a movement around the connection between what it means to be a Latina and feeling how she felt as a first generation American or US American. So I thought it was just a really great concept. And as an idea, she created this beautiful film which she promotes currently. And it is just really the catalyst for inspiring people to connect with their heritage, to create what it means to be an Enye. And she's created Enye Nation. So it's a really wonderful concept. It's a beautiful movement that she has. And she's connected with some pretty big names. So I so admire her tenacity. I love what she's all about. And so on this episode, we're going to be talking about how to launch your own movement with Denise Soler Cox. Welcome to Her Legacy Podcast. Here we celebrate women in business doing more than just climbing that corporate ladder. This is about holding a space where we celebrate what it means to be a female entrepreneur. We share the good, the bad, the ugly of being in business for ourselves. Our vision is way bigger than just the fancy titles. It's about amplifying the vision each one of us has to leave our own dent in the world. And in doing so, we're inspiring other women to do the same. My name is Patty Dominguez, and welcome to Her Legacy Podcast for legacy leaders like you. Hey, everybody, Patty Dominguez here with Denise Soler Cox. And I also want to roll my R's and give a big props to the Latinas in the space right now. Thank you so much for being here on Her Legacy Podcast.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to just see your face and be in your space. You are so awesome. And I'm super excited to talk to you.
Thank you. Me too. And we were having a little bit of a pre-conversation around this topic of really creating a movement. And I think when I heard about Project Enye, and you're going to be talking more about that, when somebody has the vision of saying, wow, do I have the wherewithal to create a movement? I definitely think of you and what you're doing. So I know that this conversation is going to create awareness for people that it is possible. So that's what I want to talk about. But first, I want to get a little braggy with you, girlfriend. What is your superpower?
Oh my gosh. All right. I would say, other than my great Latina hair.
Totally. You're so funny.
We share the same hair. I definitely think it's my superpower is being honoring that within me that I know is true, and being able to take that truth and turn it into something that helps other people.
That's awesome. That's really beautiful. And then what are you working on right now that you're really excited about? I know you've been traveling nonstop.
Mm-hmm. Well, so 2 things I'm super excited about. One is that I am blessed to be able to have been on the road now for 3 years with a film that I made, and along with other people. Obviously, it takes a village to make a movie. And then I get to talk about it and bring this message basically of belonging, inclusion, self-acceptance, self-love to Latinos and Latinas and a general audience almost every single week for the last 3 years. The next thing that I'm excited about is the fact that I'm in production now and have been for a few years with our second film. And that is really lessons from the road. I've had a chance to meet extraordinary people, of which you are one of them, who have really added to me, and learning their stories has not only added to me and made me a better person, but also I use other people's stories to inspire other people to feel less alone. Because I sincerely believe that seems such a simple thing, but when a person feels less alone, they act towards the world and towards themselves in a completely different way. And that inspires me every day to be the catalyst for someone to feel less alone.
That's so beautiful. Project Enye, when I heard about Project Enye, I met you at a conference. I thought it was so smart. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I saw your film and I thought it was so well done, so professional, so just such great storytelling within it about what it means to be an Enye. Now, I'm an Enye and I'm a proud Enye. But tell the listeners, what is Project Enye? Like, how did this start? What was the manifestation for this idea that it has become a movement?
Yeah, so it honestly started 22 years ago when I was 26. And I had literally grown up believing that my sense of a disconnection and lack of belonging to my own culture, to my own people, was my own. I didn't believe that anybody else experienced this. And also I was young. And so of course I had like that view of the world, like it only happens to me. This is only happening to me. And so it's just something I thought was my cross to bear. I didn't think that. And I also didn't even have a context to talk about it. There was no YouTube. There was no one else making even funny videos about it. So I had nothing. And you need to know, the listeners need to know that I was born in New York City, but my family is Puerto Rican and Cuban. And so family back home were Latino. And then where I grew up was very mainstream white, not Latino at all. And so I really felt super conflicted kind of between these two worlds. And then when I was 26, I had this massive aha moment, the only one I've ever had in my life that has been to this magnitude. And it was when I realized that I wasn't alone. Now, it was such a profound aha that I needed to share it with the world. And I literally felt like if the world could feel the way I felt, that I felt like I was contributing towards like the betterment of the planet, like world peace type stuff. Like I literally felt like if I could move this along and get people to feel the way I feel right now, big stuff would change. And so I decided, and it was really me at a bar with a bunch of my friends in a conversation, stories being told, and a moment like that when I realized, oh my God, all that I've been feeling alone about, I have shared with them. And if I've shared it with them, then I'm sure I share it with any child of any immigrant from a Spanish-speaking country. I just knew it in my heart. And so that night I decided to make a movie about it, but I had no experience. I didn't know anyone that made a movie. I didn't know anything, but I knew I wanted to make a movie. And by the time I got home, I was driving in my car. By the time I got home, I had convinced myself that I totally sucked and I wasn't right for the job. Like my Spanish wasn't perfect. I wasn't skinny enough. I didn't know my culture. I didn't know how to bachata, whatever it was. I just felt like I didn't have all that I needed, like this perceived thing, right? And that was total crap. And for the next 17 years, I believed that lie. But if anybody ever asked me if time or money wasn't an issue, what would you do? It's a very popular question to ask people. I always knew what mine was. And there's, that question is often asked in a group and a lot of people scratch their heads. I don't know what I would do. What would I do? What do you think I should do? But I always knew what I would do. I just didn't think I was enough to do it. And I literally lived my life like it wasn't me, but I knew, but if only, and whatever, until one day I just decided I'm enough to make one phone call. And that phone call was to my now creative producing partner who 2 years after we met, we got started making the film. But literally, I keynoted an event just a few days ago, the Latina and Latina event in San Jose, California. And I said, had I believed that lie, like had I continued to believe that lie, none of this stuff would have happened. I wouldn't have been there. There'd be no movie. There'd be no like life-changing, inspiring journey for me or like thousands of other people who have decided to use my story as the reason why they go either A, for their dreams, or B, just make a relationship better or quit a job or whatever,
Oh my God. Okay. I have got to talk about this because it is obviously what we've heard about the imposter syndrome and who am I and this and that. But the fact that 17-year journey, it was always kind of chipping away at you, so to speak, right? Always in the back of your head. Like, what if I could do this? And what if I could do that? And it didn't take you 17 years to make a decision. It just took you that one moment where you tapped into your courage that you always had all along, and just made that phone call and put yourself out there. So really the lesson is you don't have to wait. And then just, you know what, screw it, let's do it is the popular mantra of really big CEOs that they're like, you know what, in spite of it, let's just do it. And so that's really the moment when you realize that you could get this done. And I think that another example of this is like we make it so much about ourselves and holding ourselves back and doing what we're called to do. And if you think about it, that's super selfish.
Yep, totally. Mm-hmm.
Right. Because otherwise you wouldn't be impacting people. And it's like you're giving them the permission that they need and that they're looking for. It's something that resonates with them, that they're hearing from you, that changes everything, the course of their life. So I love reframing things like that. I know for me personally, when I reframed it, it's when I stopped making it about me and I stopped making it about like, listen, let me just tap into the calling that I have innately. So the question here is, what is your calling that you have innately that you're hiding and that you're playing small and you're really being selfish? How do you feel about that statement?
Yeah, I could not agree more, especially on the selfish part. I mean, especially when I think about, I just finished my 99th live event. So I've been on the road for 3 years. I've taken parts of the summer off, usually the holidays off. And so there's, about 30 weeks a year for the last 3 years that I've been pretty busy. And the 100th is coming up in a few weeks. And all I can think about is the thousands of people who have gone up to me and, said what a difference it's made. But also later I get notes like I got one just the other day saying from a mom who's an immigrant who talked to her daughter, who's the American-born child, who's an Enye, right? And she said, we stayed up for 2 hours after the screening and I couldn't believe that there was so much to learn about her. I didn't have any idea how she felt about any of this stuff had it not been for the film that her daughter didn't even go to. The mom went and the mom's heart expanded because oftentimes there's and not to get political, it's not political at all, but there's the immigrant narrative in this country. And if you're Latino, if you're the child of an immigrant, we give deference to that. Our parents sacrificed a lot. Many of them risked their lives. My mom didn't, but many of our parents did. They fled wars, really life and death situations. And so oftentimes we feel like as their children, we don't have a right to share our pain or our struggles. So we keep them inside and then we try to make good on the promise to be successful, like make good on the sacrifice, right? We pack everything away and don't talk about it until, they come to my screening and they start crying. And the thing is, the tears are good. The tears help people move through feelings that hold them back energetically. Like I'm a big woo-woo person. I believe in energetic blocks. I think there's a lot of blocks that Enyes have. And we don't even know what we don't know. But once you see the film, something happens energetically and the release begins. And for some people, they've really been able to change their lives. And how dare me hold that back? Exactly. How dare I hold that back from them? I'm so convinced this is not about me. It reminds me of that book, Big Magic. Have you read that book by
no.
the woman that Elizabeth Gilbert wrote a book called Big Magic?
Okay.
And it's very similar to this, where basically the premise is that several people will be given an idea. And I actually wrote something about this in my late 20s when I realized that this was happening with me. And I wrote, and so did she, that several people will be implanted, and it's for the sake of universal, evolution, for planetary evolution, right? And whether it be in the arts or sciences or what have you. And the whole idea is to ensure that the thing actually makes manifest and that the people get impacted and that things move and evolve. And
Ooh, that's cool.
Isn't it neat? And so people have come up to me after, screenings and they're like, oh my God, I totally had the same idea, but they didn't do anything about it.
Hey there, my legacy leader. Thank you so much for checking out today's show. We're about halfway done, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to engage further as this episode incites some creativity in you. If you're interested in leaving your own dent in the world, leaving your legacy, I have a very special 3-part video series for you. It's what I call the business trinity. And as solopreneurs, we are looking to create a sustainable business. And what I have found is 3 distinct pillars to make it happen. So I'm sharing that with you, absolutely complimentary. Head on over to businesstrinity.com. Again, businesstrinity.com. Grab that 3-part video series for yourself. It includes some downloadables in there, and you will walk away with clarity on where the opportunities are so that you can leave your legacy. Let's continue with the show. Correct. Yeah. And I don't know have you heard of James Altucher? So he's a podcast, super popular, and he talks about how he has this practice of, I think, writing 10 to 20 ideas in a notebook. Because sometimes, we all have these ideas, maybe they spark in the shower or just when you get up. And of those ideas, most of them are crap, but then within that, maybe there's one good idea. Or the other thing that I think about is I hear a lot of, especially in like venture capital or entrepreneurs, where they get approached by someone that says, well, I don't want to share my idea. Will you please sign, a confidentiality agreement? And they say ideas are crap. Its execution is the only thing that matters. So it's exactly that. It's like, if you have an idea, what are you doing about it? Not just talking about it, be about it,
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, when you were talking about the fact that you've done all these screenings, your tour over 3 years, what do you think is a critical component of creating a movement?
Yeah. So you've heard that saying, like, how you do anything is how you do everything, right? And so I'm going to like make up my own thing. Like whatever's on the inside is on the outside, like however we see ourselves here is what's possible out there. And so for 17 years, I just saw like not enough and a million reasons why not, right? And then the day that I decided, come hell or high water, the rest of my life is devoted to this. First, it was a year. I gave myself a year to make progress. And if I made sufficient progress, then I was going to keep going. And I did make like sufficient progress, which is funny because it was so little, but it was enough for me to be like, no, this is a big idea. And then I kept dreaming bigger and bigger and bigger about it. And so I think what's critical about it, because I know I'm not a master at it yet, and it's really nice when people take it and make it their own. And so really believing that this isn't about me, that I feel appointed, like I'm one of those people that was appointed, and that I believe my life's purpose is just to keep running with this ball and see how far across the field like I can get it. I think that humility is attractive, and then also really believing that without a shadow of a doubt that the work makes a huge difference. And that makes me emotional because I've received letters from young women who told me they decided not to commit suicide after seeing me speak, or women that quit their jobs or whose marriages got better, who decided just to be honest with their parents, who, because at the end of the day, it's all about relationships, right? And love. And so if I can stay centered in that, then I know that that's the attractive force that I need to keep this going, because sometimes it's been really hard. And if you see the film, you know that I at one point several years ago sold my wedding rings. My husband and I both did to pay the rent. And we also had a Mercedes repoed, which in the film I say it's returned, but really what happened, it was repoed. And when it happened, it was a huge bummer. But now it's hilarious, like the stories that we tell, like how we tried to avoid the repo man, like it's awesome. And I'm in great company. There's a lot of people who have big dreams, and just because like one thing works out doesn't mean everything's going to work out. And I think there's some quality about that the fact that I just keep getting up and brushing myself off and taking a step forward, that creates that forward motion. And then the right people that are supposed to come into my life to help me make this even bigger just fall in, right?
Totally. And it's the kind of thing I always envision it, because I know Lord knows I've had my challenges with being an entrepreneur since I quit my job in, 2013. I worked one day in January and then I was on my own. So so it's been 5 years, and I know it's been ups and downs, lots of different trials and tribulations. And I had an NLP session with one of coach, that's neuro-linguistic programming. For those of you that don't know, I actually overcame a very severe stutter with NLP when I was growing up because I'm an Enye. Because
no way, girl.
Yes, that's okay. Total segue, you guys. But one of the epiphanies that I had when I saw your film, it was like, oh my God, that's what happened to me. Like I went into grammar school speaking only Spanish. And so I went to a Catholic school, primarily Irish Catholics, and I didn't know how to speak English going in. And they didn't have ESL programs back in the day, especially not in private schools. So I was constantly hit for not knowing how to say certain words or not understanding and this and that. It was horrible. I developed a very bad stutter. And it's so fascinating how my identity was, questioned. Like I'm not like the other kids, I'm different. What's that weird language you're speaking, especially going into an all white school. And so long story short, it's really molded who I am. And it's because I'm an Enye. And it's just like, that's my journey out of it. But I marvel at these different things come to me when I see like, oh, wow, I'm an Enye. This happened to me. I used to hide it. And now it's my truth. You know, it's weird, but I'm really proud of what happened to me because it's molded me to who I am, you know, and the fact that in spite of what happened to me, I have a lot of perseverance and tenacity. And anyway, now I'm rounding it back. In an NLP session with a coach, he said, just envision yourself when you're having these setbacks. Don't go into victimhood, but it's literally like you're dusting yourself off and you're like, you know, all full of soot and be like, all right, bitch, I'm back. You know what I mean? Like that. And Denise, I'm not kidding. I literally envisioned that. I'm like brushing myself off, like rolling up my sleeves. Like I am not down for the count, you know?
I love that. I'm going to use that.
I'm not kidding. I literally envisioned that. So for what it's worth, you guys, that's how I overcome my obstacles. So I so agree. And I think there's so much power in creating those emotional connections. I mean, the fact that you're saying that through a speaking gig, that you can impact people to save themselves, you know, that's truly a movement when you connect on a heart level. And that's really the catalyst because we human beings, we all just want to know that we matter and we're being heard. And they're giving you permission because you're sharing and they're saying it back to you. It's so reciprocal. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, that just gave me chills. It's like the power of, and I feel like we hear it, the power of authenticity and Brené's work. I feel like my work is that in action, you know, and the gift is that I'm choosing to give it to as a Latino community and like a broader audience is wanting in on it too. Cause what it's really about is love and relationships and self-acceptance and stuff. But back to what you were saying about the stutter and about the repo and about like wiping yourself off and stuff like that, like, you know, you don't get to be tenacious because you say like tenacious is a declaration, but you don't, it's like saying, I want to go to the gym versus going to the gym, like wiping yourself off and standing back up again, like metaphorically and saying, like my daughter said, not today, mommy, you know, like she was imitating something on the television. And it's like those kind of words and like that kind of way of being, like that's what builds the muscle of tenacity. Like the opportunity to build the muscle is when life sucks, right? And then you get to be strong. And then all of a sudden when something really hard happens and you feel like you got this and everyone's like, how are you so courageous? Well, hello, like I put the time in, right? And that's how it works. And so like, that's what the beautiful thing is. And you have to remember that myself because the devil's in the next level. It's always like, you know,
always
trying to
level.
get to the next thing. Right. But I'm always having to remind myself, like, no, like, look how, even this morning when I was taking a shower, like, look how far we've come. And I can never be disappointed. And who knows what will be, what's coming, right? But I'm so proud of who I've been and what I've been able to create in a seemingly short amount of time, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing. All right. So what part of entrepreneurship exists that makes you happy? Like what part of it is really fun and it creates a lot of happiness for you?
I love solving problems like for people. I love being able to offer a product that solves a problem for people. And here's what's interesting is like before this, like that whole saying, like, don't take it personal, Denise. Like I was like a badass in business. Like I was the director of sponsorships for House of Blues concerts for like the whole mountain region. Like, you know, I had some jobs, I had some businesses, and I always had problems taking things personally. And it's because I brought everything, and maybe it's because I'm Latina, maybe it's a little bit of both, I don't know. But like I was told that more than anything to not take things so personal and to not mix business and pleasure. And what I love about this business and what I do now is that it's all personal. I'm in a business of being personal and being vulnerable and authentic and created a product to inspire that in people. And so I get to have it all. I'm not saying my feelings don't get hurt, they do, but it's like a different type of thing. It's not, you know, being able to create a business, because that's what we all have the opportunity to do around what we want to do, right? It's been cool to create it like this and literally feel like I'm meeting like brothers and sisters or like cousins on the road, because that's the depth of relationship that I have with our customers, our clients.
That's beautiful.
Feel like family. And then when I go to that city, I feel like I'm meeting my extended family because they introduce me to their kids and their parents and their cousins and their friends. And so to me, being able to build something that is built around my sensibilities and sensitivities has been really rewarding, you know?
Well, and here's the thing, because I've been in corporate too, and I used to hear that, hey, it's not personal, it's just business.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that the reality is to make a real impact, one that moves and where you feel driven by purpose, that business is personal. And so that's exactly what you're saying, is that the fact that you know these people, they're like your extended family when you connect with them. It's what makes it worth doing in spite of all the setbacks and challenges that you're having. So business is personal, you know?
Yes.
I mean, if it's meaningful to you, I would say so.
Right.
Okay. So as we're rounding the corner, what is your definition of success?
So I guess what I was thinking about this morning in the shower is feel like really being present to the difference that I've made. That's how I feel successful. So, you know, at times I've used, like back to that Mercedes, like I used that Mercedes, I don't know, however long ago, I earned that in a company, in a network marketing company. And I used that car to define my success. And it's funny because the day I earned it, I didn't feel any more successful than I had the day before. You know, it's so weird. And then I tried to pull that with a film, like, oh, I'm not going to be successful unless HBO picks up the film, or unless, you know, Netflix buys the film, or unless we win a big film festival. And that doesn't work. Like, you know, whether you get it or you don't get it, it's like that when the success is outside of you, it's like a lose-lose. But when it's inside, it's guaranteed win. That is a declaration. Like, I'm successful. My declaration that I was going to make this movie happen on January 1st. I always write my goals for the year on January 1st. I have a very predictable January 1st, and it always starts with writing the goals. And so I just got tired of writing a lie for 16 times. And I'm like, I'm so full of crap. I'm just going to write it, and I'm going to deeply commit for 1 year. And whatever. And then I made the call because that's the only thing I had. I didn't know anything else. I had one play. I had one thing on my list. But it was super scary because it meant that I had to stop talking and start acting. And I'd spent more time talking than acting. And so just looking back at that, like sometimes it's like, man, but I had the courage to get started. And then I had the patience to wait 2 years to do it. And then I had the wherewithal to get through 100 interviews. And then I had the whatever else, you know, and then now we've been on the road, and the resilience to stay on the road and to deal with being away from my family and my husband. Like, how could I not feel successful? So sometimes I'm just like, man, I wish I had more money in the bank, or I wish I wasn't driving my minivan anymore and we had that Mercedes, but like, but like, it won't make me feel more successful because I already,
correct.
You know, like I have a joke, like my marriage hasn't been so good. Like literally in the last several years since we sold our rings, like that's when our marriage took off and started becoming awesome. So like things do not a good marriage make. Rings do not a good marriage make. Stuff does not a successful life make. And it's like, what's the balance? Like, where do I get what I want and have whatever? And so I'm kind of like, I feel like it's an inside job and then the stuff happens. So
I totally agree.
Right?
It is always an inside out projection. So it's like whatever you're feeling on the inside is going to manifest on the outside. Cause I'm woo woo too. So I completely agree. And it's like with all the stuff, I mean, that's why you hear people where they have massive success in the material world, but then they feel very empty because they haven't reconciled or figured out just what it is that fulfills them. So I totally agree. And this fact, like maybe you do have a minivan and you want a Mercedes, but that's first world problems.
Right.
You know, we have really great lives. We have really great lives. All right. Yeah. So as we round out, after all is said and done, what do you want your legacy to be?
The most important legacy I want to leave is, of course, I want all of this, you know, to have made an impact. Like my dreams have it making a global impact. But when I think about what I care about the most and like what the number one priority is for me is that my daughters see and get power from this, you know, and when I'm long gone, that they'll remember that they don't have to ignore their dreams and that feeling enough is not a determinant to one's ability to succeed and to transcend that which they want. All they have to do is act. And hopefully my life will be a reminder of them that they can like truly live a life aligned to their soul's yearning, because that's what I've done.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Denise Soler Cox. How do people find out more about you, Project Enye, how to be a part of your movement?
Yeah, so super easy. Just head to projectenye.com and it's project and then ENYE. And there is a link there right in the middle of the page to see the film. It's free. We just released it to the general public about 2 months ago, and they can put their information in and get a copy of the film and watch it right away.
Awesome. Denise, thank you so much for being on Her Legacy podcast. I so adore you. You're such a heart-based entrepreneur. So for that, I really honor you. And I want to thank you for sharing your gifts and the vulnerabilities and just being so authentic. So I appreciate you deeply.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Her Legacy Podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. That way you won't miss any of the episodes. Also, if you're feeling very generous, please head on over to iTunes. Leave us a rating and review. I love the 5 stars, but more importantly, in the review section, let me know where you're from. What are you doing? What's your business? How are you leaving your legacy? I want to know, leader. So that way I can give you a shout out on my show. So take advantage of that. Would love to hear you so that we're really creating momentum here with what we're doing at Her Legacy Podcast. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for being here.